Most of them barely want a husband. They wouldn't ever want two. I think Janelle's been asked this question. She's like, I don't have to deal with Cody half the time. No, I would not like another husband, period, please. No. Christine, I can actually call, here, this is Christine, I'm gonna quote her. Another husband? Oh God, no.
Here's what they don't tell you about Christine Brown's happy ending. She didn't escape Cody, she just found a better camera angle. There was a time when Christine Brown was the triumphant escapee, the woman who walked away from spiritual servitude, public humiliation, and Cody Brown's narcissistic circus with her dignity, her laughter, and a healthy dose of good-for-her energy. That victory, however, was short-lived. The dinner scene with her new husband, David, confirmed what many suspected. Christine, the once-freed heroine of Sister Wives, has sold out. Not to a man this time, but to the paycheck and production notes of TLC. The tragedy of Christine's new era isn't that she found happiness. It's that she's traded authenticity for airtime. Her dinner table performance, a drunken, producer-scripted attempt to praise the man she once spent a decade publicly surviving, wasn't just awkward. It was grotesque. The woman who once told the truth about Cody's cruelty suddenly giggled through an invented conversation about what a good man he is. One could almost hear the studio cue cards flipping off screen. Christine didn't stumble, she rehearsed. Her exaggerated laughter, her empty compliments, and her strange attempt to pitch a double date between her new husband and the man who emotionally neglected her children, all of it smacked of desperation to stay relevant. She wasn't toasting to healing. She was auditioning for another season. Of course, this is the natural outcome of a family that long ago replaced faith with fame. For 15 years, the Browns have existed not as a household, but as a content pipeline. Christine's freedom arc was her highest-rated storyline yet, the defiant ex-wife escaping a polygamist patriarch for self-respect and true love. The audience applauded, and she basked in it. But as the camera faded on her new life, she didn't walk away. She renewed her contract. It seems the escape wasn't from Cody. It was from irrelevance. Her defenders point to finances, and they're not wrong. The Browns' economic dependence on the show is as transparent as Cody's midlife delusions. They film roughly 4 months a year and collect 6 figures each for the privilege of being humiliated in high definition. Christine, like the others, has no viable career outside of TLC-sponsored melodrama. At 53, with modest savings and a few side hustles, Airbnbs, cameos, t-shirts, and the occasional girl boss venture, the show is her retirement plan. She can't afford integrity. Still, financial necessity doesn't justify emotional hypocrisy. Watching Christine call Cody a good man is an insult to the very children she once defended. This is the same father who refused to take a sick child to urgent care because he deemed another wife's laundry more important. The same man who skipped his daughter's scoliosis surgery to spend time with his preferred offspring. The same spiritual leader who reduced his family's faith to a tax shelter for his ego. For Christine to rewrite that history as goodness is not compassion. It's revisionism for syndication. Her children, who grew up being gaslit about their father's failings, deserved a mother who stayed honest when it mattered most. Instead, they watched her erase years of abuse for a paycheck. Maya Angelou once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them." Christine once believed it, until a producer asked for a reshoot. The irony is that viewers once loved Christine precisely because she wasn't Robyn or Mary, because she didn't toe the line or perform sainthood for the cameras. She was flawed, funny, emotional, and painfully real. That rawness made her compelling. Now, she's crossed over into the same contrived universe as the rest of them. All snarky confessionals and self-delusion. An actress in a show that lost its plot years ago. It's easy to see the signs. The good man line wasn't an isolated lapse. It's part of a pattern. Christine's recent on-screen missteps, the stray dog debacle, her pettiness about Janelle's grandkids, her exaggerated snark, all reek of someone who's come to believe her own fan edits. She's convinced she's untouchable, that she's still the people's favorite. But the more she leans into the caricature, the less she resembles the woman viewers rooted for. The confidence now reads as arrogance, the humor as meanness. She's become what every reality star fears most: self-parody.
And the dinner scene with David didn't just humiliate Christine, it humiliated him. Watching the man who supposedly represents her fresh start sit silently while she name-dropped her ex was painful. His expression said what the audience was thinking. Why are we doing this? David, to his credit, tried to anchor the moment in reality by gently disagreeing with her ludicrous assessment of Cody's moral character. But his discomfort only highlighted how far the production has fallen. It's no longer a documentary about plural marriage. It's a hostage tape featuring the ghosts of a broken family forced to reenact trauma for ad revenue. Even Christine's defenders, those eager to excuse her contradictions as producer pressure, can't deny the obvious. She could say no. She could refuse to play puppet to the same machine that once exploited her misery. But she doesn't. Because in the Brown family economy, integrity doesn't pay the mortgage. The audience, too, bears blame. We cheer for closure but demand continuation. We claim we want healing, but we keep tuning in for the dysfunction. So Christine obliges. The show must go on, and she must remain its sympathetic lead, even if that means turning her liberation into a brand. She has become both the product and the pitch. There's a bleak poetry to it. The woman who once escaped spiritual subjugation now sits at dinner, glass of wine in hand, justifying the character assassination of her own growth because the cameras are rolling. Her laughter rings hollow, but the check clears. The show that began as a peculiar exploration of faith and family has devolved into a mausoleum of former selves, and Christine, of all people, is now its most willing curator. In truth, no one leaves Sister Wives. Not really. They all just find new ways to stay. Cody clings to delusion. Robyn clings to victimhood. Mary clings to denial. And Christine clings to her camera time. The only difference is the flavor of the self-deception. For Christine, it's the sweet taste of nostalgia for a struggle she can now repackage as triumph. What began as emancipation has become performance. She didn't escape the cult of Cody. She just founded a rival sect, one that worships at the altar of relatability, filtered through the lens of production lighting. And like all zealots, she'll keep preaching until the audience stops listening. Until then, the message is clear. Redemption sells, especially when filmed in high definition and edited for commercial breaks. The Brown family saga was once about faith. Now, it's about syndication. And Christine, once its most human casualty, has become its most polished spokesperson. There was a time when Sister Wives offered something resembling human interest, a window into an unconventional family struggling with faith, jealousy, and the logistics of shared husbands and shared mortgages. Now it's a ghost town of a show, populated by people who no longer speak, but still pretend to for the camera. The once dynamic web of sisterhood and conflict has been flattened into a half-scripted wasteland of forced conversations and awkward dinners, with Christine chirping through her talking points and Cody rehearsing his delusions of patriarchal grandeur. What remains isn't a family, or even a story. It's a content farm with a camera crew. The Browns' empire has run out of narrative oxygen. Gone are the bustling scenes of kids, chaos, and cross-household antics. Gone are the ideological debates about plural marriage as a calling or curse. What's left is a loop of stale scenes where everyone pretends to care about Coyote Pass, a plot of land so over-discussed it deserves its own credit line. The entire season now feels like a hostage situation between the Browns and their production company. Both sides know the story is dead, but neither can afford to bury it. TLC's insistence on keeping the carcass animated has turned Sister Wives into an unintentional parody of itself. Scenes that once carried tension now carry the scent of desperation. Christine suggesting that her husband David should hang out with Cody. the man who publicly humiliated her for years, is not just implausible, it's insulting. Mary's empty B&B plotlines play like deleted scenes from a Hallmark movie no one wanted. Janelle's quiet normalcy, once a stabilizing force, has been reduced to a filler reel of errands and construction updates. And Robyn, the network's perennial villain in tears, seems to have discovered the power of not crying, revealing, to everyone's horror, that beneath the trembling chin lies someone far less pitiable and far more calculating. The production, of course, is to blame for much of this decay. What began under Puddle Monkey Productions as a voyeuristic yet oddly humane documentary about faith's contradictions has been reduced to a grotesque puppet show. The new creative team has no pretense of subtlety. They don't capture conflict, they stage it. They don't observe emotion, they manufacture it. Every interaction feels test-screened, every pause focus grouped. One could forgive the Browns' hypocrisy if the fakery were at least entertaining. But this is not entertainment. It's embalming. The irony is that the Browns have become the very thing they once mocked, a family defined not by belief, but by performance. When the series began, their claim to authenticity was their ordinariness, a polygamist family doing dishes and homework, navigating holidays with too many casseroles and not enough boundaries. That ordinariness was their selling point. Now, 15 years later, they have become celebrities who can't function without their own myth. Every tear, every toast, every raw conversation is pre-approved and post-produced. Even the fans, once willing participants in the illusion, are turning. They've begun noticing the seams, the bad ADR, the jarring edits, the scenes that feel like fever dreams of executive notes. "Why am I watching this?" has become the unofficial tagline of the later seasons. The answer, unfortunately, is simple. Habit. The same inertia that keeps the Browns filming keeps the audience tuning in. Everyone's just waiting for the next emotional foreclosure. It's not as if the Browns don't know what they're doing. They are fully aware of the grotesque theater they inhabit. They joke about fake storylines and producer prompts, but continue to deliver them with professional precision. They are salaried participants in their own humiliation. As one might say, if you can't be happy, at least be watchable. Kody Brown, meanwhile, continues his spectacular descent from patriarch to parody. Once a man who mistook charisma for leadership, he now mistakes volume for authority. Watching him on Special Forces only confirmed what many suspected. Stripped of his wives and his carefully edited reality, Kody is not compelling. He's exhausting. The nervous energy, the compulsive need for attention, the faux masculine bravado. It's all the same act, just without sympathetic lighting. His desperation to be admired has metastasized into a personality disorder on film. And then there's Robyn. No longer the trembling saint, but the haughty hoarder of sympathy. Her transformation is fascinating in the most clinical way. Gone are the endless sobs and apologetic whispers. In their place, defensiveness, condescension, and the unmistakable air of someone who finally realizes the audience hates her and can't understand why. Her collecting habits, mountains of dolls, boxes of forgotten purchases, entire rooms of meaningful junk, have gone from quirky to pathological. Robyn has become the suburban dragon of the series, hoarding porcelain instead of gold, convinced that her sentimental clutter will someday prove her worth. It won't. No one wants the legacy of a woman who mistook compulsive shopping for self-expression. If Robyn's vice is accumulation, Christine's is performance. Both women, in different ways, are addicts.
one to consumerism, the other to applause. And Cody? His addiction is power, long gone but still hallucinated in every self-pitying monologue. Together they form a perfect ecosystem of dysfunction, feeding off one another and the production that sustains them. Even the show's few normal figures, Janelle, the pragmatic, quietly sane one, can't save it. Her scenes, while refreshingly human, have all the narrative energy of a bank statement. No fights, no tears, no melodrama, which, in the logic of reality television, means no value. Healthy people make bad television. And so, the show must pivot back to chaos, to feigned dinners and forced reunions, to conversations about healing that serve only to stretch the runtime. The Browns' financial reality explains the rest. They have been living on TLC's life support for over a decade. The show is their income, their retirement, their relevance. Without it, they'd be another divorced, middle-aged family scattered across states and storage units. That is not compelling television. So they cling to their brand, squeezing the last drops of notoriety from a premise that expired years ago. They know the cameras are all that separate them from ordinary obscurity. And that, perhaps, is the most tragic truth of all.
And yet, the real villain of Sister Wives is not Cody, Robyn, or Christine. It's the mythology of authenticity itself. The lie that these people are showing us their real lives. They aren't. They're showing us a dramatized simulation of real life, filmed through layers of denial and desperation. The result is uncanny. Familiar faces mouthing unfamiliar truths. A family that once stood for religious conviction, now standing only for syndication. At its core, Sister Wives has become an experiment in human inertia. How long can people perform meaninglessness before it collapses? The answer, apparently, is 15 seasons and counting. Even the most forgiving viewer now recognizes the formula. A contrived issue, a round of confessionals, a few fake tears, a commercial break, and an anticlimactic resolution. Rinse, repeat, retreat to Instagram to promote a new candle line. What was once a story about the spiritual cost of polygamy has devolved into a televised autopsy of greed, ego, and emotional decay. The Browns are no longer a family trying to make sense of their faith. They are brand ambassadors for their own dysfunction. The wives who once fought for individuality now fight for screen time. The husband who once preached unity now peddles bitterness. The children, bless them, have grown up and moved on, only to be dragged back as recurring characters when the plot runs dry. At some point, every long-running reality show faces the same existential crisis. What happens when the story is over but the contract isn't? The answer is what we see on Sister Wives now. A family trapped in a feedback loop, pretending to move forward while standing perfectly still. The Brown Empire is hollow, but it's still standing, propped up by reruns and residuals. It's fitting, really. A family that once justified moral compromise as spiritual principle now justifies emotional compromise as good television. It's the same con, just with better lighting. There's something morbidly fascinating about watching a family implode in slow motion while still insisting it's thriving. The Browns have long crossed from reality television into performance art. A decades-long meditation on self-delusion, financial dependency, and the bottomless human capacity for denial. Sister Wives no longer documents a family. It documents what happens when people mistake being filmed for being alive. Cody Brown, patriarch turned punchline, is the show's most unintentionally honest character. Every episode now reads like an accidental confession. His manic energy, his compulsive need to dominate every conversation, his cartoonish attempts to reclaim masculinity,
All of it betrays a man who has built his entire identity on control and has no idea who he is without it. Watching him strut through special forces like a midlife crisis in cargo pants was both comedic and tragic. Stripped of his domestic kingdom, Cody revealed himself to be not a misunderstood visionary, but an aging narcissist desperate to prove his relevance to anyone who will tolerate the noise. The irony is that for all his talk of manhood and leadership, Cody has spent the past decade being emotionally outperformed by his ex-wives. He mistakes volume for authority, resentment for wisdom, and aggression for masculinity. His obsession with feeling alive has become a parody of itself, a sweaty sermon from a man who confuses hormonal imbalance with enlightenment. He boasts of his virility while his family disintegrates, insists on loyalty while alienating his children, and rants about respect while earning none. It's Shakespearean. If Shakespeare had written King Lear as a supplement-fueled YouTube dad rant. And then there's Robyn, the self-anointed martyr of the Brown household. For years, she perfected the art of crying on cue, a single, trembling tear deployed to deflect accountability. Now the tears have dried up, and what's left is far less flattering. A woman hollowed out by control and consumerism. The new, unfiltered Robyn is sharp, defensive, and terrifyingly normal. The kind of normal that reveals how performative her meekness once was. She's not weeping anymore because she's finally achieved what she always wanted: total dominance. Unfortunately, as many villains discover too late, absolute power in an empty kingdom is indistinguishable from loneliness. Her house, cluttered with sentimental treasures, dolls, and enough tchotchkes to make an estate planner weep, is her cathedral. The hoard isn't an accident, it's theology. Every trinket is a physical manifestation of her need to prove her worth. Every unopened box a monument to control. She calls it saving memories. In reality, it's saving proof of existence. She and Cody now live in a mausoleum of consumption, surrounded by things no one wants and affection no one believes. Even their children, once protected from the ugliness of the family's implosion, will inherit not wisdom or wealth, but storage units full of emotional debris. If Robyn's addiction is shopping, Cody's is self-worship, and Christine's is validation. Each has found a new way to keep the cameras interested. Cody flails through testosterone-fueled tantrums. Christine practices performative joy. And Robyn redecorates the ruins. Together, they've become a spiritual ecosystem of dysfunction, perfectly balanced, perfectly doomed. And the children? They've learned the lesson better than any sermon their parents ever gave. Survival depends on distance. McKelty's recent public commentary revealed more insight than the show has offered in years. Her descriptions of Mary's volatility, Cody's selective parenting, and the psychological gymnastics of being raised in a televised cult of personality exposed the rot behind the facade. The fact that she had to flee cross-country just to breathe without being cast as the bridge between feuding adults says everything. These are not just family wounds. They are occupational hazards of being born into televised dysfunction. Mary, for her part, has become a cautionary footnote in her own story, an expert in self-inflicted misery. Once the emotional anchor of the family, she now drifts through scenes like a ghost haunting her own B&B. Her endless attempts at reinvention, motivational quotes, platitudes about empowerment, awkward speed dating segments, only emphasize her stagnation. There's something tragic about watching someone fight so hard for relevance in a story that moved on years ago. She smiles for the cameras, but her eyes confess what the editing won't. She knows it's over. The Browns' collective downfall is not just personal, it's systemic. They are the inevitable byproduct of a media culture that rewards emotional exhibitionism and punishes authenticity.
What began as a rare window into plural marriage became a case study in exploitation, not by producers, but by the participants themselves. The Browns learned that vulnerability sells, then kept selling it long after it was sincere. Their pain became their currency, their faith a marketing slogan, their dysfunction an industry. The tragedy is not that they lost their way, it's that they filmed it. At this point, the show's moral architecture has fully collapsed. There are no more wives in the sisterhood sense, no shared faith, no community, just contracts, confessionals, and the desperate hum of people trying to stay interesting. The women who once built a shared identity around sacrifice now compete for screen time and social media followers. Cody, stripped of authority, has resorted to the only power left to him: petulance. He weaponizes his bitterness like it's still persuasive, not realizing the audience moved from empathy to mockery somewhere around the 10th tantrum about respect. Robyn, for her part, hides behind the new favorite phrase of toxic accountability dodgers: "It's not safe." The family, she insists, is too toxic to reunite, as though toxicity were a force of nature that struck them, not a behavior they created. She fears a reunion not because it would be unsafe, but because it would be honest. Without Cody's bluster to hide behind, she would have to face the raw reality she's long avoided. She didn't marry a visionary. She married a man who needed an audience. And still, TLC keeps filming, as though embalming the Browns in digital form could preserve the illusion of relevance. There's talk of a new chapter, of healing, of fresh beginnings, but the only thing fresh is the desperation. Every scene feels like a reenactment of former significance, a family performing a ritual long after the god has left the temple. They are trapped not by religion or each other, but by habit, and the hollow applause of an audience that no longer believes. What makes it so darkly compelling is that everyone in this saga has become exactly what they once feared. Christine, who fled oppression, now markets her independence like a lifestyle brand. Mary, who longed for connection, now packages loneliness as resilience. Robyn, who claimed to bring harmony, has become the architect of isolation. And Cody, who once called himself a spiritual leader, now resembles a motivational speaker for lost men who mistake arrogance for purpose. Fittingly, the Browns' final act might not be a grand finale, but a slow fade, the quiet death of a spectacle that doesn't know it's over. They'll film the sale of Coyote Pass, the reunion that never happens, the symbolic closure that never arrives. Then they'll disperse again, not into freedom, but into smaller, sadder storylines. Cameos, interviews, podcasts, and the inevitable reboots that promise the truth and deliver nothing. Perhaps that's the real legacy of Sister Wives, a meditation on the cost of visibility. The Browns once sought to prove that plural marriage could be wholesome, modern, and even aspirational. Instead, they proved something else entirely: that prolonged exposure to self-performance erodes reality itself. The longer you pretend, the less you remember what's real. The cameras will stop eventually. They always do. The lights will dim, the contracts will expire, and the Browns will be left alone. Not with each other, but with themselves. And that, after all these years, will be the one relationship they've never known how to handle. Until then, they'll keep setting the table, pouring the wine, and pretending there's still something to toast. Because in the Brown universe, illusion is the only family tradition that never ends. The illusion may be their legacy, but seeing through it can be ours. Stay with me.